Okay. And bringing it back in, guys. Yeah, there we go. Testing, just had to make sure. All right. Thanks for keeping up again. Um, Picking up where we're leaving off. One of the topics that's a heavy title is the segregation, mass incarceration, and gentrification. It's a lot of things that people talk about all the time, and so I'll be talking about specific things within those things. But right now, I think I've mentioned part of these things before, but there's a very particular resource being shared right now, and I think it's important to mention as we approach Juneteenth, which was the abolition of slavery. As we approach 4th of July, Independence Day, our Independence Day was Juneteenth. If you don't know that history, look it up. But there is kind of an asterisk. The 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which states in Section 1, and I quote, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction, end quote. The book The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander and Ava DuVernay's Netflix documentary The 13th examine how slavery links to modern day prison labor. So I do want to talk about that, share some resources around those conversations, and some of the information that I know back home. And if you have an interest in the section and area of prison reform, abolishing private prisons, re-entry programs, all of these things, voting rights for, you know, ex-cons, which just whatever. That's going to be a good episode for you. When you talk about how that links in with segregation, Ava DuVernay's production company Array produced "Teach Us All." It's a documentary that I've already talked about, but it's about the most segregated school systems in the country. Little Rock, Arkansas, and New York City are heavily featured, and that heavily piqued my interest. One interesting stat from the film is that the percentage of minority students attending hyper segregated schools has nearly tripled since 1988. Author and New York Times reporter Nicole Hannah Jones is featured in this documentary and is also one of the loudest voices on the issue of civil rights segregation and incredible research like she did with the 1619 Project from the New York Times. If you're not familiar, that reports the stories of how the first ships of enslaved Africans arrived in 1619, the August of 1619, in the English colony of Virginia. There's a podcast and entire project that's available to read online as well. I suggest you check that out. Personally, personal experience that drew me to this was the Legacy Museum, and director Brian Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative. The Legacy Museum from Enslavement to Mass Incarceration was conceived, created, and developed by the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama, and it is one of the most powerful things I've ever witnessed. I picked up some resources from the gift shop. One data resource, Segregation in America, has several quotes and facts that piece together Arkansas and Southern history in a way that's completely mesmerizing. One quote saying, I'm a segregationist, aren't we all? Virginia Johnson was an Arkansas politician, and the wife is Arkansas Supreme Court Justice Jim Johnson. As a part of the staff of the Arkansas State Senate from 1951 to 1953, Johnson promoted her husband's ballot initiative to amend the state constitution to require the Arkansas legislature to do the 5 brown in every constitutional manner. The campaign succeeded, and the amendment remained the state constitution until it was repealed in 1990. Johnson supported segregation throughout her career. She ran for governor in 1968 on a platform that publicly affirmed is her segregationist views, and despite losing the election, she remained active in Arkansas politics and strongly supported George Wallace's presidential campaign. Johnson never renounced segregation. In 2005, she wrote, the people of Arkansas have solid convictions, and if offered the opportunity, they will demonstrate once again that they prefer their own. Let me read that quote right back to you. Whew! It gives me chills. In 2005, She wrote, "The people of Arkansas have solid convictions, and if offered the opportunity, they will demonstrate once again that they prefer their own." Another quote. Quoted saying, "I don't care how many court rulings are handed down or how many troops are sent to our state. We shall not surrender our sovereign rights and served powers to govern and control our state institutions." Justice Jim Johnson was an outspoken segregationist who served as Arkansas State Senator and Associate Justice among the Arkansas Supreme Court in the 1950s and 60s. After the Education versus Brown decision, Johnson launched a campaign to ensure that defense of segregation remained a central political platform in Arkansas. Johnson formed the White Citizens Council of Arkansas, which prompted plans to integrate schools in the town of Hoxie, and proposed an amendment to the Arkansas Constitution that would authorize state officials to ignore federal law. Voters passed the proposal, but it was later struck down as unconstitutional. In 1956, Johnson challenged incumbent Orville Faubus and ran for governor on a segregationist platform with the endorsement of the KKK. Although Johnson lost the election, he leveraged his supporters to pressure Faubus to embrace the segregationist cause. He was instrumental in persuading Faubus to defy federal orders to desegregate Little Rock Central High School in 1957. It should be interesting to note that one of the Johnsons' three sons, Mark Johnson, was elected to represent District 15 of the Arkansas State Senate in 2018. And we'll end that topic for there and save everything else for the future. Under the topic modern urban planning solutions, that's kind of where you get into talking about gentrification as well. Whenever you think about the segregation of Little Rock communities, one has to be the topic of gentrification. And some of the questions obviously you can ask is simply, what is gentrification and how is it impacting our communities? There's something very clear that's happening in Soma and Argenta. I'm not going to say it's good, I'm not going to say it's bad, but it's interesting to say the least. There's not a lot of information available when you try to Google and search Arkansas gentrification. You have to get very specific and you have to know where to look. But the May 2019 issue of the Arkansas Times, like I said, you can go to issuu.com and you can see any of the Arkansas Times periodicals for free. There's this one. It looks like this. It is from May 2019. There's an article by Leslie Newell Peacock called "Contemporary Petaway. A neighborhood is now known more for its architecture than its gangs," offers a lot of insight to the issues and questions that one might have about gentrification in the area. It mentions how builder Mike Ordenoff and his wife began building houses and soon building 16 houses and then 4 more ranging from $99,000 to $285,000. I started typing a quote that I did not finish, but once I started talking about this subject out loud with people, that's whenever I got that name. And I think that's maybe how I was like, hey, I think I read about this somewhere. And I was able to go back to this article. And I'm trying to flip through and find it right now, but for the sake of time, we're just going to move on. So 2 things in the topics of gentrification and solutions, alternate solutions, or however you may view things. There is a resource that I'll be using a lot called, it's this one at the bottom. It's the Frank Lloyd Wright archive from the Museum of Modern Art. I got a chance to go visit that back in 2017, and they just happened to be doing a Frank Lloyd Wright exhibit, which fascinated with him, fascinated with architecture. And, just happened to be reading. Sometimes, something like this, they had 3 floors, all of his life's work. And this book is literally everything you view. So if you didn't get to, if there's something you wanted to reference, you can literally look through the chapters and you can see it. And I was looking for something else, and I found something called like the Rosenwald schools, or something relative to that. And so I'm going to read the following that's from that and kind of what got my attention. But in 1881, Hampton graduate Booker T. Washington became the head of the Tuskegee School, Normal School for man, sometimes things autocorrect and it just doesn't make sense. But Booker T. Washington became the head of a school for colored kids by that somehow was being paid by the order of Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller. It's in the book. It's not in my notes, but Washington approached Julius Rosenwald, a Chicago-based Jewish philanthropist, to donate funds, asking that the black communities raise the other half. Washington approached Julius Rosenwald, a Chicago-based Jewish philanthropist, to donate funds, asking that the black communities raise the other half. After success with one teacher schools in a year's time, from 1913 to 1914, Rosenwald's charity would instead donate a third. Black communities would raise another third, and white-run education boards would allocate the last third. That little bit was enough to make me just keep reading. And I'm not even going to talk about Black Wall Street right now, but I do want to mention Jay Morrison, because when you do talk about Black Wall Street, how do we fight gentrification? How do we recreate a Black Wall Street? In what ways can we do so? Should we do so? I think one of the biggest platforms and conversations being had is by Jay Morrison. He created the Tulsa Real Estate Fund. Give that a quick Google. We're going to talk about some stuff later. Moving on. Decriminalization and policy reform, particularly drug reform. The Marijuana Policy Project states a summation of the following on their website, which is mpp.org/states/Arkansas for this particular link. Arkansas medical marijuana sales started in May 2019 and have been strong despite only a few dispensaries being open. 2 dispensaries are located in Hot Springs, while one more recently opened in Clinton. The state has authorized a total of 32 retail dispensaries and 5 medical marijuana cultivators. Let's see. I'm not going to read all of this data because it's a lot. But there are a lot of questions to ask about this episode and topic. The main reference for this episode is going to be an article by lawyer and professor Omavi Shakur that I've already mentioned. That is titled Arkansas's Manufactured Incarceration Crisis, How Policymakers Made Arkansas the Fastest Growing Prison State in the United States. It is published on UALR's website in the October of 2017. I'll have that resource available immediately. And I'll have the story of Harrison. I scanned and did those in. I've already got the APA format, and I'll post those things along with these videos whenever those go up for people to read. But a lot of questions want to ask, what is the difference between decriminalization, legalization, and medical marijuana? How can your weed be legal as a patient, but you can't legally drive it home? How would decriminalizing drugs change our communities? How would decriminalizing drugs change how our communities are policed? I think that's a big one. It's a very big one. Couldn't legalizing and taxing marijuana generate significant revenue, specifically affecting the homeless population, veterans, and education? And how does decriminalizing drugs overall impact our communities and influence? Then the last main topic of the podcast is going to be around the living wage as it pertains to the tipped minimum wage. The federal tipped minimum wage hasn't changed since 1991. I'm 30. I've been working in restaurants and food service since I was 14 in some capacity or another. And as I've gotten older and had my own hurdles and experiences in the industry, I could never understand why the living wage in the restaurant industry operates around $2.13 an hour. And in many circumstances, hourly positions in the kitchen and management are barely above the federal minimum wage level. There's not a lot of media and conversation on the topic. Some resources and references in this episode will be from a book called Nickel and Dime that was in I want to say the late 90s, early 2000s, published in the early 2000s. Um, from That's written from author Barbara Einrich, from her perspective as an undercover journalist, and it sets out to investigate the impact of the 1996 Welfare Reform Act on the working poor in the United States. Um, there's a PBS NewsHour conversation titled "Rethinking Wages for Tipped Workers," and a West Washington Restaurant Association YouTube breakdown of a ruling and denied petition to reconsider in an ongoing tip pool lawsuit on September 6, 2016. Those have been some of the best resources I found. We're never talking about this topic, but a campaign and nonprofit called One Fair Wage recently came about, and their main interest in is abolishing the tipped minimum wage, which I think you could also look at as alternate solutions to the tipped minimum wage. But I'm surprised that I didn't find them a little bit sooner because they have been around for a couple of years. But this episode's gonna use them definitely as a platform, because I like what they have to say. I don't want to read everything that I have listed here because I don't want this episode to be too long. We are about to end things, but one of the things that they say is like the restaurants industry's two-tiered wage system is broken. We can fix it, and I believe that as well. And so, I mean, there's just a lot of things to explore: how pay structures affect expendability, incentives, and accountability from employers and management. And like, we can start there and we can work towards everything else. It's like no benefits, no overtime pay, no retirement funds, no health insurance. Is this fair? Would increases in wages reduce the lack of benefits, or add to any benefit? Like, would that create an area of benefits? Is that a completely separate problem? Um, any type of solutions must be compliant by the Department of Labor. That's something that I do know. And so whenever I'm thinking about alternate solutions and even responses that people have, because that's probably the thing you have the most when anybody's ever reported or asked a question, when you have like someone getting asked about how the minimum wage is going up or the tip minimum wage is going up in certain areas that it's already happened, and people that have pushed back on it saying, oh, well, it's going to affect prices and our prices are going to go up and like yada, yada, yada. That's usually the most information you can find out. So I want to explore this a lot. I'll probably be talking to a lot of bartenders and servers and having them chime in, maybe do some interviews over the Zoom now that everyone's familiar with that. But thanks for tuning in again, guys. This has been another episode of Facilitate Local. If you're watching the video, disregard, because we're about to keep going. I'm not turning that off. And we're about to have story time. So hold on to your shorts. Okay. Welcome to Storytime. This is another episode of Facilitate Local. This episode is going to be kind of off the cuff. I don't have a lot of notes. I just wrote down a few experiences that I felt comfortable, which I guess is the key word, sharing. I've just noticed how people have been sharing their experiences, particularly Black people. And I think that it's going to get really uncomfortable. It needs to get more uncomfortable than that. I want to see one thing that I haven't seen. How about that? Is white people sharing their stories of maybe when they could have done something, or maybe when they did do something. And maybe that's something they don't want to publicize, but that's something that I would like to see publicized, at least in a statement. Um, so some of these stories are going to be different than others, but yeah. Story number one of the more recent ones. There is a place that I worked downtown in Little Rock um, for I don't know. That doesn't matter. Anyway, one of the reasons why I went to work there was because of the two people that I knew that worked there. I knew, I knew them as coworkers previously. Um, I was coming off an injury. I was looking to get back into the game, and so I went there. And things are going well that whole time. There's ups and downs in any restaurant, of course. And there was one night after a shift um, where we were discussing something racial. It's not even important enough to bring up exactly what was said and how, yeah, it's just not important to bring that part up. But to me, it was more important how everyone else reacted as opposed to how I felt about the situation. Because if I feel some type of way, I'm probably going to vocalize that I feel some type of way. If I feel like something has been racially motivated by speech or prejudice, any kind of prejudice exhibited or assumption, I'll just check you. And that's what happened. Verbal check, a little bit of a back and forth. While it was difficult and painful and didn't feel good, that's what happened. And he and I were good. And the next day, I woke up to texts from coworkers and had a separate meeting from one of the owners just about everybody was freaking out and just like what he said was out of line and we've disciplined him and yada yada yada, and I'm just like, and it was because he had felt a load of guilt that he wanted to relieve and absolve himself from. And we later had more conversations about this. It was an ongoing topic. This is someone that I care about a lot. And yeah, and so I just, in terms of response and as someone that hasn't always been heard, like how did you feel about the situation before you just like insert an opinion like that was so horrible, or just like, weird crisis communication, just like calm down. And give someone the time to tell their story and speak before you place assumptions. Because even one of my coworkers was like, "You should file a lawsuit," and like blah 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 blah. It's like, what does that accomplish? Um, anyway, moving on. Next story. A little further back, I'm 30 years old. Whenever I was trying to date my first white girl, we liked each other, and the reason I'm this is still a person that's vaguely in my life from back home, I guess. But and I never even thought about it until I was actually going to tell it in connection with the other one, the next story. But I can remember I met this girl. We were working at Wild Over Country. It was one of that was like a lot of people's first jobs. That was my first job, and we met. We would hang out. She was from a deeper area of Levy in North Little Rock. Um, which I wouldn't say is racially divided, but it's poor black people, poor white people, poor Mexicans. Everybody's there, and yeah. Anyway, I just remember when we like talk. You're talking on the phone and all that kind of stuff, and the reason why nothing ever happened with us was ultimately because she was terrified of telling her father that she was dating a black dude. She was just like, I could never date a black dude because of that. Like, it can never happen. I can even remember her sister, who I feel like I was closer with each of them at different times, but even her sister at the time, I can remember chiming in and being like, yeah, that could like never happen. And that was just like the first time I was just like, that's interesting. Move on. A couple years later, First time I buy roses or any kind of flowers for a girl is Valentine's Day. It was a girl I met at some party, um, white girl, and can't date this white girl. I sent the flowers to the school, and her dad freaked out. I'm trying to remember what happened. I think the school wouldn't accept them. We had to send them to her house, and that's how he found out because he saw the name on the flowers, and it just became this whole ordeal. Like, I'm sure N words were used, all of those types of things. And then, situation blows over. Not gonna date this girl. Not gonna have that. And I can remember she had a friend and I had a friend, and we just basically switched. But anyway, months later, go to I'm at her house. For whatever reason, I'm at her house. I don't know why that wasn't a flag in my mom's brain. Should have been one of mine too. I don't know. But we go to like a birthday party or something like that, and it's fine. And I don't even know if my mother knew about this situation to that degree. I don't know if I was that comfortable back then. I don't think I ever remember telling her that. Anyway, I just remember him meeting me, and he was like, "Oh." There was just this shock of who I was, what I sounded like, how I dressed, like he was completely shocked. And he said something to the effect of like, "Well, you would have been okay." And it's just like, all right. And then the first real white girl I ever dated and was in a relationship with where parents knew was senior year of high school. And at the beginning of that, uh, whenever we became public, I guess, whatever, her mother started expressing concerns. And at the end of the day, not only did she move out of her parents' house, not only to be with me because there's clearly other issues that trickled down just from that situation alone, but her dad was the cool one. Her parents were divorced. She went to stay with her dad. I definitely had a relationship with him. I'll get there in a minute. Um, and but mother's excuse was, "I'm not racist. I'm just worried about what other people would say and how other people were going to react and what other people were going to do." And just thinking about how that made me feel, and even, you know, similar communities, like close communities, and having to, like, fast forward, it's high school relationship. We end up breaking up. I go to college. Her mother was a professor at the college that I went to. My dorm was right next to her building. So occasionally I would have to run into her mother. Not only there, but I worked at one of the most popular restaurants in town. And I would have to often see her entire family sometimes because they were from this town, and have to interact with them regularly. And just kind of like, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe how, like, what those feelings, what that felt like, still how that feels to me. Um, and then there was a more complex, even another more complex relationship with a white girl. We were together for a very long time, and I'm not gonna go into a lot of details, but the verdict of the Trayvon Martin case was something that changed my life. That's when I began to change those people that I let in and around my circle, and be more aware of what I allow and don't allow in my life. Many ways people are doing that now, and that was something that struck so much with me at that time, particularly because it was like Trayvon Martin could have been any of us. That could have been me. That could have been my cousins. Um, And I think even at continuing, especially as these things continuing to happen and you get older, it's almost like, I don't know, there's always someone dying that's my age or that reminds me of me or reminds me of my uncle or someone that I worked with or someone I grew up with or someone I love. And it's extremely disheartening. And I remember trying to, for me, the people that are in my life that are the closest are usually going to be the women in my life. And particularly the woman in my life, the woman I'm dating. And those, as someone that already had so much experience dating interracially, um, that was a crazy ride. Being, again, not having my voice be heard, because at the end of the day, and definitely final nail in the coffin of the relationship for sure. Um, Ended two other extremely close friendships, and I'm sure a slew of others that I can't even remember exactly what words were said, but I know I cut off a lot of people around that situation. Um, but the main thing was we got into, some social media back and forth, and this is another reason why I'm careful what I say, how I say it online, especially when other people are watching, and why I think you can have discourse online back and forth, but you got to pick and choose your battles and also make sure you have that emotional energy. Um, all that was said, all that happened, and like even within the dynamics of our relationship, she refused to talk about it. Refused. When I say not even like we're not talking about this right now, or like we're not talking about this again. It's like we talked about it once, or like it happened once. We're not talking about this again. And then to find out that the three of them, like her and the two friends that it involved, had a separate conversation together where they talked about it. And so, like I said, never forget that feeling. Nail in the coffin. And even some follow up, like one of those friends recently came out and said, like, messaged me with this whole thing. Like, and when I say recently, I mean not in these times, but probably like 6 months ago or so. And was, just apologizing. Was just like, you're right. And yada, yada. And I just was, I don't know. I don't really have interest in, opening up old wounds and whatever it was. But that was interesting because that's happened to me at several points in my life with people. But I don't care who's right or wrong. I care about having my voice heard. And being shut down like that, I'll never forget that. All by white people. And white people I loved and cared about. They were very dear to me. Moving on to a different story, a different little area. Talk about interactions with the police. 30 years old. Whenever I hit around 20 times getting pulled over or 20 police interactions, I stopped counting. And but I know we're probably sitting around 35, 40, something like that. I've been ticketed like 3 times maybe. The reason why that number is so high, one of the reasons why that number is so high, is from one of the relationships I recently mentioned. Whenever that the girl I dated in high school, my senior year of high school, whenever she moved to be with her father, he lived 20 minutes away, 25 minutes away from our school, my hometown, and is a completely separate town and kind of known for racial stuff. It's called Mayflower. It is, so it's like, I'm originally from North Little Rock, born in Little Rock, raised in North Little Rock, which are right by each other. Conway is where a lot of people go to college. It's a college town. It's about 30 minutes away. Mayflower's like 5 to 10 minutes away from Conway. And a little bit more perspective, Harrison is about 30-ish minutes away from those areas. That racist town that I mentioned previously in the previous episode. But yeah, whenever, it wouldn't be super often, but anytime most of the time when I would drop her off at home, I would get pulled over. Same cop almost every time. Same few cops almost every time. Usually surrounding my car every time. At least 3 of them. Always at night because, yeah, I mean, after you get out of school, you go home at night. When curfew and all that kind of stuff. And before legal curfew too, that was definitely a thing. Like I always made sure to never be out there past legal curfew, but there was never like an intense threat. It was just they're gonna fuck with me, and excuse my language, but that's what they did. That's what they were doing. And I would say probably at least 15 of those interactions with that police department. Never got ticketed except one time. Because like I said, they were just messing with me, wasting my time. It didn't matter if like they saw me going. There's a certain route. It's a loop. So the same way you go in, you got to come out. And so you can see where they used to post up. It's like they knew my car, and like it's not a lot of dudes, not niggas in this area. So they know if I'm going one way, I'm coming back around, and I'm not staying here, right? So I can get pulled over on the in or the out. And there was one particular time where they pulled me over, and they run everything, make sure everything's good. Every time I'll come back clean. The one time I didn't come back clean was after my mother had passed. I had gotten a speeding ticket from a different situation. I had gotten a ticket in my own neighborhood too, and mother had passed. Never got like a court date notice because I moved out of that house and went to stay with my aunt. And so whenever I got like, court date, failure to appear, there's a warrant out for your arrest. When they came back and told me a warrant was out for my arrest, even he was like, I know who you are, kind of, and you've never given me any kind of trouble. He's like, do you know what this is about? Yada, yada, yada. And I had no idea because in my brain, I'm 16. Or I'm 17. I'm 17. And yeah, he actually reran my stuff because I was like, are you sure it's not David Dotson? Because I'm like, sure it ain't my dad. And comes back and he's like, no, it's you. And he gave me a couple minutes. I don't think I was able to get a hold of my aunt. I was able to get a hold of my girlfriend's dad. And so he and his wife and my girlfriend got their butts up in the middle of the night. Because at this point, maybe I dropped her off at 11. It's definitely like almost 1 a.m. at this point. Like it's been a long time since our last interaction. And they came and got me, no problem. Cop didn't tow my car, let her dad drive my car to my aunt's house. Wrote me a ticket. Like, basically, had I not been dating that white girl, there's no telling what the fuck would happen to me. In that situation, very pivotal moment. Even like reflecting on it now. But yeah, that's definitely been a thing. My amount of police interactions as a citizen and as a worker has been kind of crazy. And I'm gonna tell 2 more stories, and then I might be done because this is a lot. Yeah, there's enough stories on here. We can have story time number 2. Because, yeah, there were some other things I was going to talk about in terms of restaurant experiences particularly, but I think I'm going to tell actually one more story and be done while we're talking about the cops, because everything else doesn't really have to do with, it's more about workplace settings. This one particular incident with the police. I was 23. think I was 23, 22, 23, something like that. It was March. It was college. Those are college years for me. Smoked weed. And smoked weed openly. At this point, even after all my interactions with police, Conway was pretty safe, and I had never been pulled over in there. And I mean, like 2 years or so without. I got a little too comfortable, and so anyway, I'm not an idiot. I know weed is illegal, um, but whatever. It was the times, and I don't know why I can remember it because I never usually would leave my house with it on my person. Um, but for some reason, I guess maybe, and especially the small amount, and we'll get there. But the small amount, what was I gonna do with that? Like, I don't know. But I guess I wanted something to contribute if I went to a party or something like that. Um, but my tags had been expired for like a week, like barely a week. And I remember it like yesterday. I was in Conway. I believe the street was Center Street. Leaving my house, rolling down Center Street because you can get all the way across town from Center Street. I'm thinking that that's the street that's named. If y'all know what I'm talking about, it's that roundabout by Hendrix. It's one of those roundabouts that connects behind the school. And I remember I'm rolling down that street, and like I'm actually smoking, and I see some friends riding their bikes, and they're smokers. They stop. We say hi at a stop sign. Yada yada. There's no one behind me. There's no one coming or anything like that. Pass it back, and I'm about to keep it moving. And there was a cop that approached, and I just noticed it looked like you couldn't tell that we were smoking or anything, but it just looked like maybe a weird exchange. And so just the thing went off in my head, like, I'm gonna circle the block. Like, I'm not gonna go my normal route. I'm gonna circle the block. And so I did. And 4-way stop sign. That cop did turn around trying to find me. And when I came to that 4-way stop, he was to my right. It was his go. And for some reason, instead of turning right, because I guess I would have looked suspicious to me, which is exactly what I should have done, I kept going. I went straight. And of course, he got behind me, saw my tags, pulled me over. Pulls me over, doesn't even write me, pulls me over for the tags, expired tags, doesn't even write me a ticket for my expired tags when this is all said and done. Keep that in mind. Pressure, time. Another cop shows up as usual. Maybe two more cars showed up. But this is the one and only time I was ever even pulled over in Conway. But I had 0.23 grams of marijuana. That, not a gram, not half a gram, not even half of a gram of weed on me. It was in like a little tiny, like, I'm sure like one of those, we used to use those jars from Cracker Barrel. It's like, I just remember they had these weird things that you could reuse, and people used to use those all the time. It's probably in something like that. And I remember I freaked out. Of course, I freaked out when I got pulled over. I'd been smoking. I had Ozium. Wasn't stupid. I was an experienced stoner. And I don't know. I was still just freaked out. You could see my blunt put out in my Sonic cup if you opened the lid. I originally had it in like my glove compartment, and I remember I moved it to my apron, my work apron, which was on for some reason. I don't remember if I was leaving work. No, I was going to work. I don't know. I don't know what was going on. But that happened, and for some reason I put it in my apron, which was on me, middle pocket, just thinking like I'm a server. So like, and there's my pocketbook, there's my pens, there's my change pouches, all that stuff right there. It could be anything there. And he reached in the window when he was talking to me, and he kept asking me what was in there. I kept like, and he was like, no, 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 no. And he literally reached in the window and pulled it out, which I did not know was illegal, according to my lawyer. And I did so. Whenever I even revealed that fact, we were already in court, which could have definitely been something else. But I just wanted all the shit to be gone, just over with, right? And so, yeah, at the end of the day, I never. He was basically like, if you cooperate, you will get this charge taken care of. Like, I'm gonna give you a number to call. This is who you call. If they don't pick up, wait for them to call you back, and they're gonna meet up with you. And blah blah blah. So there was this weird situation where I had to meet with two undercover police officers in the Best Buy parking lot, the back of the Best Buy parking lot in Conway, Arkansas. I think I had a friend, like a couple of friends on standby just because, like, if things got weird. I didn't have anybody, like, watching, but, like, just like, letting them know where I was and what was going on. Yeah, so this is a long story, which is why I'm going to be done after this. But, they're literally trying to get me to, like, tell them where I got 0.23 grams of marijuana from. And I was like, somebody I worked with, dude, like, what are you doing? What do you want? 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 And eventually they're like, okay, we'll be in touch on, like, proceeding. Like, we'll call you, mail you, notify you, whatever. Never got a single notification. Called the police department for, like, weeks straight, trying to see if I had a warrant out. Fast forward, I moved to Little Rock. Such a crazy day, the day that it happened. It's Labor Day. This was like March when all this stuff originally went down. It's Labor Day. Weird circumstances. Actually, another racial situation. Didn't even have this one in the list because I always forget about that one because I connect it to being arrested. But leaving work, very frustrated. It's Labor Day. If you're on the interstate in Little Rock, you know you can't go less than 70. You will get ran over in normal times. The only time you'll get pulled over is during, rush hour and on a holiday. It's a Labor Day, so the state troopers are out getting them quotas. And so I get pulled over, black trooper, and, runs everything. You know how fast you're going. Yeah, cool. Super cool, super chill. And real quick, he's like, you got anything weird on your record that I know, do you need to tell me about? And I'm like, no. He's like, cool. Comes back and he's like, you lying to me? And I'm like, no. And he's like, cool. You got something on your record. You have a warrant out for your arrest. And I'm like, see, do you know what that could possibly be? And I was like, I have no idea what that could possibly be. And turns out it was in Faulkner County. Little Rock area is Pulaski County. And so I'm in Pulaski County where I'm getting pulled over, right? It's Labor Day too. And he even mentions, like, he's like, do you know what it is? And then once it comes to me, I'm like, yeah, I know what it is. I tell him, like, the whole quick rundown story, blah, 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 blah. He believes me. And I mean, like, he searches me. I mean, like, he's being so, it was probably the most pleasant experience I've ever had in a situation with a police officer. He was not escalating the situation at all. He was asking me proper questions. He was believing me. And as he should have been. And, he allows me to call my girlfriend to come get my car, blah, 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 because he's even, like, we're having to wait for so long. So we're really just waiting for her to show up, but we're waiting for so long because he's like, he's like, it's a holiday. They're not coming to get you. They came and got me. So go to Faulkner County, end up getting out. Not even overnight stay, very short stay. And going to trial with it, got the lawyer, got the charge off. You in school. Yeah. Yeah. When the thing that got me off was the telling my lawyer about the legal search, though. Because I can remember even her face in court because we'd only talked like once or twice on the phone, and then like once in person with the meeting and the money and all that. And I can just remember her look on her face in court, and like her just kind of like looking at me and kind of shaking my head like, you don't even know what kind of case you maybe could have had in that situation. Maybe I'm right about that, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I just remember how I felt in that moment. Just being happy that it was going to be expunged off of my record. And because I was in school, not because of anything else. But yeah. And even in that situation, very thankful for the people and the woman that I was with and helping me get out of that situation financially, because that was definitely certainly a thing. And yeah, this is a story that I'm sharing because had it not been me, or even had it been me in any other situation, or even that one, that the federal offenses or the state, you can look at state offenses for that amount of marijuana and state or federal offenses for those things, and it is just insane. And so that's where my the topic about weed decriminalization and interest kind of comes from, because it's so crazy. And even after working with police officers before, having many interactions outside of one as a civilian, but actually as a worker, knowing how they police and hearing how they talk about certain communities and certain things, you change the drug system, and we're having a completely different conversation and having completely different responses from the police. And that being said, that's pretty much all that I want to say. There's a quote that I'll leave you guys with. There's a book that's listed right here out of a lot of the ones that I've been talking about. It's The Power of Now, which I'm so not a self-help book person. Or not self-help books, but like not a book like this. Like I'm totally into self-help books, but not books like this. And I even told him that when he gave it to me. And I've actually started reading it a little bit. But it was from the person that I first spoke about that I was close with. We had those conversations and yada yada. And after we had went through that particular back and forth and work situation and remained friends, and he knew I was moving to New York and kind of going on a new journey. This is a note that he wrote to me in the book that he gave me as a gift that means something to me in a way that I hope when people are talking about having complex conversations and talking about very complex topics, racially, particularly, just remember we can always come back to here, come back to I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I'm just going to read the quote, but it says, Davion, in the 3+ years that we've known each other, I feel like we found ourselves now at a place of deepest friendship and respect. I see you as a man of great thought, drive, integrity, and discernment. The qualities that you exhibit and the wisdom you share has been an incredible example for me. I know that as you move through your journey, these things will continue to elevate you to your highest levels. In mine, this book has been proven to be a tremendous tool in elevating my perception of reality, and I hope it serves you in the same way. Peace and love. I think I've done a good job of not mentioning anyone's names, and that's probably why this is so long, because I didn't know how to write it out without mentioning people's names. And even moving forward, it'll probably be a little bit drawn out when I do Storytime Part 2. But I do definitely want to talk about, black faces and white spaces and what it's like to be fired while black. Those are basically some stories I'm going to talk about in terms of restaurant experiences, things I've seen, some of the personal ones. And so, yeah, we'll save that for story time too and just kind of call it a cap. But thanks for tuning in again, you guys. I'll be back the week after you listen to this. These are going to be the episodes for this week. If you're listening on video, I'm going to edit those and have them out on Tuesday and Thursday. maybe I'll just do 2 episodes every Tuesday. I'm not sure, but whatever structure it is, you can be sure that I'll be posting about it as soon as it goes up. So thanks for rocking with me this far, you guys. In terms of the events and things that I want to have when I come back home, I'll be getting in touch with people. I'm already started a little bit of that groundwork, but questions, comments, and concerns, facilitatelocal@gmail.com, or you can sign up for updates at facilitatelocal.com and hit that newsletter button. So hope everybody's staying safe. Again, thank you to all the protesters, everyone that's been donating to causes, everyone that's been doing more education on causes they should be donating to on a national level, on a state level, on your community level. You've been serving your community, you've been feeding your community, like whatever you're doing to amplify people's messages. Thank you. And I know I can do better about amplifying others. And so that's one thing that I do want to say again, that I'm trying to commit myself to daily. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. See y'all next time. Peace.